Welcome back to another edition of the podcast, and it's our final game week predictions for the 24-25 National League campaign. It's game week 41 National League preview and predictions, the penultimate game week. Paul, firstly, how are you doing today? Of course, a very nervous day for you. Actually recording, we're streaming, I should say, the predictions on the day of all the games.
Yeah, I thought it might be a good idea to do it at the morning of the games. I know people will be probably travelling to them. Yeah, I'm doing okay, Luke. Yeah, we've got to rely on results at other places, and we've got to rely on ourselves to win the game against Halifax, your boys, which I think is a tough ask in relation to the last three games that Wealdstone have played in. I think they've barely registered a shot. They were outclassed by Southend, who, to be fair, we all know that they were on that push towards the playoffs. That wasn't really the team that you wanted to be playing. The weeks before that, Maidenhead and Boston really aren't the teams you want to be playing. You'd like to think you'd beat them, but especially off the back of a really encouraging 1-1 result and against Barnet and beating Forest Green, to go into three games against Maidenhead, Boston, and Southend, you'd like to think that there'd be enough points taken from there to not have to rely on to today's game. But clearly we are, and those that don't really know, and I think most will know, Wealdstone have to win against Halifax, and Dagenham can't win against Solihull Moors at Solihull Moors. So, the other twist in that, I guess, Luke, is the fact that Solihull Moors are being managed by our previous manager, Matty Taylor, and how much does he want to help us? He makes the right noises on social media in terms of finishing the season. Most teams aren't going to go out there and pretend to be on the beach, even if they are. And we're just hoping that a kind of a miracle happens and Wealdstone get what they need, and we'll be together next season as a team, and Wealdstone will be in the National League.
I suppose it feels like now, and it's a massive shame because you're in such a good position a couple of weeks ago, but you're actually outsiders now. It's not in your hands to survive this season. And you look at the final day fixture. Halifax, yes, have confirmed a playoff spot, but they're in the playoffs. That's another side that on paper you wouldn't really want to be playing, compared to Dagenham, who are now, it's in their hands to survive. They're a point above you, and they're of course coming up against the Solihull Moors side, who've had an awful season. I think currently in mid-table, you'd probably expect Dagenham to be able to get a win maybe there. And I think it's going to be a big ask for Wealdstone to beat Halifax. But you just never know. And another side as well who could still survive. And if we're speaking about Wealdstone being outsiders, these are certainly our outsiders. And of course, it is Maidenhead. Of course, today they're coming up against Boston. Boston improved recently. They've confirmed a spot in the National League for next season now. Another side, nothing to play for, but that won't be an easy game for Maidenhead, will it?
No, not at all. And it's essentially, 1 from 3, isn't it? And I mean, Maidenhead have done what they could in terms of picking up results in the last couple of games, just to even be in the mix. When they looked like they weren't. It's usually frustrating because Wealdstone were 5 points clear with 4 games to play, and Maidenhead were gone. Dagenham didn't look like they could pick a result up, and for Maidenhead not to lose in the last 5 and Dagenham only to lose 1 in the last 5, that's a pretty impressive sort of stat, really, when you're where you are in the league and you're clambering for points. And you look at Wealdstone, their performances haven't been great. They've only lost 2 in the last 5, and it just boils down to who can find the form at the right time of the season. We've spent a whole season, Luke, talking about inconsistencies of forms across a lot of teams in the National League, and I think at the end of the day, you deserve to be where you are after a 46-game season. And at this time, Wealdstone deserve to be in the bottom 4. Maidenhead probably deserve to be in the bottom 4. Boston clearly don't, and Dagenham clearly don't as well. And it goes down to a 90-minute shootout now. And who knows? Maidenhead may stay up. Dagenham and Wealdstone both go down. It's a strange combination down there. But yes, like you said, it's not in Wealdstone's hands. Dagenham are going to be massively favourites with a 6-1 win last week against, at the time, from playoff chasing Altrincham. That was an impressive result. So Yeah, let's just see. Let's just see a quarter to five where it all pans out. But if it happens and Wealdstone go down, thoroughly enjoyed National League for the last 5 years. I can't see Wealdstone coming straight back up. That's the challenge. So we've got to embrace today and try and do everything we can to stay in the league for at least one more season.
Yeah, I think it's the same with Maidenhead. It's the same story with them. They've been in the National League for a long time now. I think Wealdstone, Maidenhead, both being part-time, it always feels like they're the two that always overachieve every season. I think on paper, if you look at the budget of the both sides of them, both being part-time, they shouldn't survive compared to some of the other clubs. Even you look at Dagenham, who are down there at the moment. You think of the financial backing that they've had in the past, maybe not at the moment, but also in terms of the actual squad as well. Some of the players that they've got, Dion Pereira, Justin Rees, and the list goes on. There's a number of players, Joshua Mera as well, going forward. There's a good core of a squad there with a lot of good individuals. They've just not performed well this season, whereas it does feel like it's started to all come together towards the final stages of the season, which is perfect timing for Dagenham to be able to survive. But for Wealdstone and Maidenhead, throughout the whole season, Wealdstone have kind of been out the drop zone, then have been back in. And then what's kind of happened is sides have improved and Wealdstone have carried on that run that they're doing where they win a couple of games, then they lose a couple. And they just haven't been able to pull away from the drop zone at the pivotal times. And I think now on the final day, they're coming up against Halifax. They really do need to get the win. Well, they do need to get the win to survive. And I look at Dagenham and them going away to Solihull. I think it's going to be a big ask for Wealdstone. But like I've said, I just think for Wealdstone, Maidenhead, they've done so well over the last couple of years. I think we spoke at the start of the season about it's going to be a really tough year for those two sides. And I think what hasn't helped them as well is the fact that Boston, Yeovil, Braintree and Tamworth have all had good seasons. I expected Tamworth, Braintree and Boston to all be struggling this season. And the only one you could say at the moment that is actually struggling is Braintree.
Yeah, no, I completely agree, Luke. That was going to be my next point. When we sit and do our predictions for the league at the beginning of the season and mid-season we do it and we talk a lot across the cast and we've got fans who come on, the likes of Wealdstone and Maidenhead and those that get promoted each year have got to just want to think that there's 4 teams worse than them over the 46-game season. And generally 2 or 3 or maybe even 4 of those are the promoted sides. The anomaly this season, and it's no excuse because you've got to get better and you've got to compete in the National League. But the 4 teams that have come up have done remarkably well, and they're most of them are going to end up in and around mid-table. Now, you look at the seasons previously, there's always been 2 or 3 that have come in and really struggled. And not only that, Luke, you look at the relegated sides. There's always a bit of a basket case side that sort of ends up in a bit of a free fall and it gets in that mix. Again, that hasn't happened this year. So, I think the league is it stronger than it has been? Probably not, but it's consistently stronger across a number of more teams across the whole league. And that's really then affects the likes of the part-time teams. But Tamworth are part-time, and look how they've done. Ebbsfleet, they chucked a bit of money out, but they're brand new to the league. Yeovil have got a great structure of full-time, but they still had to come in and adapt to the league. And that's what they've done brilliantly well. So, fair play to them. They'll hopefully, for their sakes, they'll build on and consolidate in the league now rather than sort of come and go. And, it's down to the likes of Wealdstone and Maidenhead and even Dagenham, if they survive, not to be in this position next year. And if any of us do drop, we've got to be strong enough to come back up and learn our lessons from this season.
I don't think if Dagenham survive, it should go over the cracks, how poor the season this has been for Dagenham. And I think they need to learn for it for next season. It's been a strange season for them. They started quite well, did Dagenham. They went downhill in the new year. Of course, sacking manager Ben Strevens. A lot of people have different opinions on that. The new managers come in. It looked like it was going completely downhill from that point, that they were actually going to drop down into the National League South. It felt like there was no hope for them. Then, of course, new ownership comes in. That was a strange couple of days, wasn't it? Of course, they've been and gone since. And then since that's happened, Dagenham have picked up a bit of form. say a bit of form, but form that I think no one expected. You look at the previous 4 games, unbeaten in 4. They've actually got 3 wins in the last 6. They've really picked up of Dagenham, and to be fair, I didn't expect them to be in this position come the final day. It felt like they were down and out and would have been joining Fylde and Ebbsfleet, and probably even Maidenhead. I thought they would have as well been gone by now.
It's almost like the ownership issue at Dagenham almost galvanised them rather than hindered them. And they've ended up taking some impressive points and some impressive results at a time when I think most of us who watch this and we talk about it sort of think, where are Dagenham going to get their next points from? They just looked like they weren't able to do it. And, we also thought, well, at some point the bubble may burst with Boston. They're going to come into a hard run again. I think one of the only teams they've lost to in the last couple of months is ironically Wealdstone at the Vale. And, that was a hard fought sort of keenly contested match that was fairly even. The game up at Boston certainly wasn't. So, the results around those that are struggling now probably haven't been as favourable as they would have liked to have been on their point. But clearly, those that have picked up the results, then I think it just goes to show what a funny bonkers league that it is, Luke. And although it hasn't probably been quite as bonkers as it has been in the previous few seasons, there's still been times and periods, and going into the last day where 3 teams can get relegated and 2 teams can take a playoff place. You'd take that from a league campaign.
As well, you look at the points to survive. I've never seen it as high as this. It could, at the end of the day, come 5 o'clock, a side could go down with 53 points this season, which is ridiculous. Usually it's just below 50, isn't it? Maybe even lower than that in the past to survive in the National League. And I think a couple of months ago, it was looking like it'd be proper low. So for it to be as high as it is, I suppose for Wealdstone and Maidenhead, I don't look at it as being particularly poor seasons for them. I don't ever look at Wealdstone and go, yeah, it's been a really poor season for Wealdstone. They deserve to go down. Yes, maybe you'd say they deserve to go down. I just think towards the bottom, it's been so strong this year, particularly like I mentioned with sides who've just come up improving. And for example, with teams like Boston doing what they've done in this second half of the season, just not helped you at all. If they'd have carried on like the same route that they were going down, the final 4 would be more or less sorted now. It'd just be you, Maidenhead, Wealdstone and Dagenham. For that, well, Boston would be down, and it'd probably be between you and Maidenhead to survive.
Yeah, I know you sort of looked into that, how many points were going to be required to stay up, and you very much sort of said it was around the 50-point mark, and I think considering that someone could go down on 53 points, which is only 3 points more, but that's 1 win more than we would suggest in terms of gaining points. I think that just proves the consistency of the league across more teams and more teams taking points off of each other. You looked at Barnet going in and being champions, and could have been champions 2 or 3 weeks ago, and end up dropping points to the likes of Wealdstone. And they were always going to win the league. It was just a matter of when, but they still were dropping points. Braintree took points off them, etc. So it just proved that I think across the board, the league, not necessarily stronger, but more even across more teams. And because of that, a team may go down with a record number of points. And you can't mask that, Luke. You could turn around and go, well, we got, we didn't go, we went down when we had to gain 53 points. That would have got us 17th, 18th, or 15th last year, whatever it may be. It doesn't mask the fact that you've been relegated and it's been a poor season for that team individually. So, it will be a tough one to take, because that's a good number of points, but you've got to compete with those around you. And if it's not enough to stay in the league, then so be it.
Right, so we're going to come to the live chat, have a bit of playoff talk, and then we're going to get on to the predictions. So we've had AJ who's come in tonight, and he said, not tonight, I should say, this morning, and said, well, this non-league season has been crazy. Barnet have won the league, and now 100 points is what we need. Come on, Halifax, send those stones down. League 2 next year. Next year we win. Yeah, it's a Barnet fan. Of course, they'll be celebrating today. I suppose for you, Paul, as well, I think this is the major thing is, of course, surviving, but also Predictions League. We'll have one more show after this. You won't want that final show to be you in a Barnet top, Barnet just got promoted and Wealdstone going down. That'd be horrendous for you.
Yeah, no, it's not. Listen, I've not had a great weekend football-wise. The kids did. I don't think the kids won a football match between them, and so I'm hoping that Wealdstone sort of change that for us. And listen, if I've got to go in next week and wear a Barnet shirt, then so be it. It's all part of the fun of it. And congratulations to them. Then they'll probably get the 100-point mark. They'll get promoted. They'll go and give it a good go at League Two. They've given Dean Brennan a 3-year contract. They've got a lot of trust in him and his coaching staff. And they'll push on and be where they believe they deserve to be. And Wealdstone will lick their wounds whether we go up and down and sort of reset for next year, whichever league we're in.
Christopher's also coming to the Southend fan and said, Shrimpers Army on the march again, over 1,600 soaked by Friday. Absolute credit to the club in Kev. And the key CEO, SU, we trust. Of course, Southend today, they can get inside the playoffs. Well, they're inside the playoffs at the moment. This is another thing, how strange this league has been. I don't think throughout the season Southend fans have been particularly pleased with what they've seen at Southend. They've been mid-table throughout the majority of the season, and then they've just come into form at the perfect time. Sides around them have really slipped up, Altrincham being one of those sides, Gateshead as well, and it's now in their hands to actually finish inside the playoffs this season. And if they did maintain a playoff spot, I'd be fancying them, to be honest, with the amount of, I think, confidence that they would take and momentum they'd take from the final end to the season.
Massively, Luke. They played Wealdstone at Roots Hall last week. There was 10,000 people there. The biggest crowd since they played, I think it was something like Manchester United in a League Cup tie some years ago. So the feeling is good around Southend. The board did well and kept Kevin Mayer. They didn't panic when it wasn't going quite as right. They've trusted him, and they should have trusted him, and they have trusted him. And I think that a team coming into the playoffs in form is the team to be fearful of, whether they finish 7th or not. We've talked over the last few weeks about how no one in that top part of the league really wanted to take grip of trying to win the league or take it off of Barnet, and also try and get those playoff places, and that's proven. If you look at the form, Southend have lost 1 in 5. Then Gateshead, Altrincham, and Tamworth, between them they've lost 3 in 5, each one of them, right at the wrong time. But your boys Halifax have just been marginally better with form, and because of that, they're still in the playoffs. So it was a really strange one where there didn't seem to be any real, I guess, desire to want to get in the playoffs. It's not that they all want to get in the playoffs. It's just how it's happened and how it's panned out. And I think you're right. Southend with a full Roots Hall going into whoever they end up playing after today's fixtures, and it all settles. You've got to feel that they're the ones on the march.
I think fixtures for Halifax have probably been slightly kinder than to the likes of Gateshead and Altrincham. Of course, everyone plays each other the same amount of times, but Halifax had a full squad against the better sides in the division, and until those players got injured, we had a great record against sides inside the top 7. We'd taken a point off York, we'd taken 4 points off Barnet, taken a point off Oldham, point off Rochdale as well, Gateshead as well. I think we'd beaten them away and drawn at home as well. So we have a very good record against sides around us in the league. However, when we started to play the poorer sides, that's when all the injuries happened. And so I suppose, in a way, what's been to our advantage is that we've got a weakened squad, yet we've still probably got enough to be able to get wins against the poorer sides in the division. Whereas if we'd have had a side like Barnet, who we had a couple of months ago and we had a full squad, we probably wouldn't have got anything against them. Same with Oldham, same with a lot of sides, Gateshead as well. And I suppose that's the thing for me, and is why I'm not too optimistic going into the playoffs, is the fact that, yes, we've managed to maintain a playoff spot just about. However, the squad is significantly different to that squad that I think's earned as a playoff spot, if that makes sense. And I think now going into the playoffs, I think we're really going to struggle, if I'm being honest. However, I just see it as, it's a bit of a free hit for us as well. I don't think there's too much pressure. I'm not going to get too down this season, unlike I have done in previous years, if we lose at the first hurdle. You just never know. You never know inside the playoffs, I suppose.
I mean, from a Halifax perspective, Luke, and looking at the table as it is today, Halifax come to Wealdstone. Do they have a mindset that they just got to try and preserve some players and rest some players for the playoffs? Or actually, when they look at it, if Southend do beat Gateshead and Halifax, if they don't win it, if they don't win or draw against Wealdstone, Southend could drop to go up to 6, Halifax drop to 7th, and then you're playing Rochdale rather than Oldham. Do you think there's any psyche in what Halifax are looking at, thinking who would we prefer to play and when?
If I'm being honest, I think we could still get 5th, couldn't we? Which would give us a home tie. And although we're not the best at home throughout the season, I don't know, inside a playoff spot, I get the impression that Millington want to be at home compared to going to somewhere like Oldham, because I think Oldham in a playoff match, it'd probably be the one that I'd take the most, more than anything. But I don't know. I just feel there'll be so much pressure on them, Oldham. Big crowd, first playoff game in a number of years. However, we've had an awful record against Oldham over the season. We drew at home, yes. We lost in the FA Cup and we lost away at Boundary Park as well. Prior to this season, we'd never lost away at Boundary Park. So I don't know. I think I'd take them just over Rochdale, because I think if you look at Rochdale and Oldham, I would say Rochdale have got the better side this season. I think they've got the better individuals now compared to Oldham. However, inside the playoffs, I think quality might go out of the window. I think you have to look at other areas of the game, that grit, that determination. And I suppose that's something that I feel Oldham do have. I think they have that ability in the playoffs to be able to grind out results. So if I'm being honest, I'm not too bothered who we actually play. I think we're one of the weaker sides inside the playoffs now. And I think it's a free hit for us, like it would be for Southend. So I'm not too bothered who we play at the moment. I'll just take it how it comes.
Oh, that's fair enough. I'm glad you say that, because hopefully they will rest some players today against Wealdstone. Yeah. But I mean, the conundrum is that even into the last game of the season, Halifax could finish 7th or 5th. Gateshead could come into the playoffs. Southend could drop out. So it's be interested to see how, when the dust settles, who plays who, and whether there's any particular advantage of being home and away first in these games is another one that's up for debate. But yeah, I mean, Southend, like you said, I think they're the ones to really be worried about. And what a game that there is up at Gateshead today, because it is basically winner takes all, Luke, isn't it?
Yeah, 100%. We've also had Steph, who's come in tonight and said, good morning, welcome to the stream, Steph. David, might be one last dance, I suppose, having you in the stream. Hopefully not. But then again, I suppose we're definitely going to lose one of you, aren't we? Unless Dagenham go down, but then again, we've got Dagenham fans who tune in as well. But he said it's the all-new breakfast show. Wonder if Luke and Paul will have croissants and orange juice on the table. Yeah, for Maidenhead. Are you feeling any pressure at all, David, or any Maidenhead fans today? Of course, I know Maidenhead always do leave it till the last minute to confirm safety, and they always do seem to pull it out of the bag, but I don't think you've ever been in this position before going into the final day, have you? Stingstone's coming and said, feels weird to think you lot still have another game week to go. Yes, Stingstone, of course, Maidstone in the playoff final against Boreham Wood. I'll be honest, I'm rooting for you guys to get promoted via the playoffs next season. I'd much rather Maidstone be in the National League next season. And then Chris has come in, Paul.
A good day, fellas, from Melbourne. Latics need a big result today to get a home tie in the playoffs. Nervous and a banana skin. Yeah, I mean, there'll be fans from all these National League sides, whether it's at the bottom end or top end, wanting to sort of feel like they've got the advantage in terms of playoff positions or trying to stay in the league. So, yeah, big one for Oldham. Like we sort of just discussed, they're a team that you shouldn't take lightly in playoffs because of the size of them. A bit like Southend, they'll get big crowds behind them, won't they? And does that add to the weight of expectation? Will that actually help them over the line? It's an interesting one, but yeah, I mean, it could be an Oldham Halifax playoff semi-final coming in. So we'll wait and see.
Yeah, I think for Halifax, for me, it's going to be a good playoff game no matter what. In terms of atmosphere and following, we'll either have Rochdale or Oldham away. We took over 1,000 to Oldham a couple of weeks ago, so inside a playoff match, you never know how many we're going to take there, and that'll be absolutely mega. And I think it'd be the same with Rochdale as well. I think we'd take a large amount there as well. You never know, we still might even get the home tie. I don't know, would Oldham fans prefer that? I think with it being the first playoff match in a long, long time, I think in terms of a lot of fans' lifetimes as well, I think I'd like to think that they'd probably want the home tie at Boundary Park where they can have a complete sellout and have the whole crowd behind them. But who knows? I suppose it'll be split between the fan base. Caroline's coming in, an Aldershot fan morning. Good luck, Paul, today. Miracles can happen from a Shots fan. And then Chris has said Wealdstone are the favourites with the bookies today. I think that's in terms of beating Halifax. To be fair, we have a weakened side, Paul, at the moment. I don't think we're a playoff side in terms of the actual squad. So you just never know, I suppose. But for me, I don't even think it's a case of Wealdstone not being able to beat Halifax. I think it's more of a case of I'd expect Dagenham to go to Solihull and win there.
No, agree. And I think from a Wealdstone and from any team, right, whether it be Halifax, Gateshead, Southend, Wealdstone, any team just have to do what they've got to do and sort of complete their side of the bargain. And once that's done, if you have to rely on other results, then so be it. And what Wealdstone don't want is, the fans don't want is, almost waving the white flag and a bit of a surrender goes up and we go out with a whimper. And Maidenhead fans will be the same, and Gateshead fans will be the same against Southend, and Southend fans will be the same. There's going to be performances that need to be put in and expected, and then you've just got to then hope and rely on other results. But if you don't do your part first, then there's no point relying on others. So I think Wealdstone have got to go into this and think we've got to do everything we can to beat Halifax, whether they've got in different form, whether they're resting players, whether their squad's depleted. You still got to beat what's in front of you. And again, the table doesn't lie Halifax are where they are because they've got good quality and they've got good consistency in this league. So we've got to go in and really respect that, but we've got to go and play our own game and do what we can to terrorise them and then try and get 3 points.
Tom's coming as, of course, another Maidenhead fan. I said, hi, please could you win today to give us a chance? Thank you. Maidenhead United supporter there. I suppose for all clubs, isn't it? It's just like, it must be so horrible being in the situation that you're all in at the moment. If you're a Maidenhead fan, if you're a Wealdstone fan, or even if you're a Dagenham fan at the moment, they'll be looking over their shoulders. But it just must be awful to be in a situation like that where you're going into the final day. It's not only yourselves that you have to win, but you're relying on other results. And it comes down to it, 5 o'clock. If you are dropping down, you must also be looking at games over the course of the season like, we conceded in the last minute there. Why do we concede there? We didn't turn up in that game. They were beatable and there for the taking. And I think that'll be the case with Wealdstone. You probably look at that Maidenhead game a couple of weeks ago. I think Maidenhead were probably there for the taking, and you didn't really take full advantage of that, I suppose.
No, and I mean, look, you could beat yourself up and look and think, well, we could have got a point there. We missed that chance here. But, over 46 games, like I said, you are where you are because of what's happened. Now, I looked at it, analysed it a little bit and thought, well, in the first 15 games of the season, I think 6 or 7 games, we conceded the goal in the 10th minute. Sorry, in the 80th minute or later to surrender points we were gaining at that time, be it a draw from a win or a loss from a draw. But surprisingly, over the season, Wealdstone have won more points from losing positions than losing points from winning positions, if that makes sense. So stats can lie. So, I think you're right. You do look at individual moments and individual periods of time and, be it a course of 1, 2, 3 games or more, saying, well, what if we'd done more there? And you can look at that Maidenhead game, but the Wealdstone season doesn't boil down to the Maidenhead game. Even times in that game where it was felt that, did Wealdstone do enough to go and try and win the game? No, but at the same time, if you watch the game, both teams needed to win, but both teams didn't want to lose, and it's a real difficult position to be in as a manager and as a set of players. So do you twist or stick? And I think both teams struggled with that. There was neither of them. They were going for it, but they weren't going for it. And neither really sort of took it by the jugular and went, right, we need to win this game. And because of the flip side is that you lose the game, and if you lose the game, you've lost 1 point, maybe not gained 3. So a real difficult one. Probably felt with it being at the Vale that we should have maybe taken more advantage of that, etc. But it is what it is. It wasn't. I don't think the season defines on a game like that. I think it is over a period of time. And simply we just haven't been good enough to be able to be out of that bottom four coming into today. And it leaves us with the situation we're in. Maidenhead leaves the situation they're in. Gateshead, at the top end of the table, not being the master of their own destiny to a point, because I know they've got to win, but it's a tough one to take as a fan in those positions. It's frustrating. Nothing we can do about it. We've just got to get on with it, support the team, and hope for the best. That the footballing gods are out there, and that we stay up, and God forbid Maidenhead and Dagenham go down, but it will be what it will be, mate.
Suppose for the likes of Wealdstone and Maidenhead, and I know I've already mentioned this in the past, but they're always clubs that you always know they're going to be down there because of the budget that they have. And I think every season for them, it's not really about progressing. Obviously, they'd like to, but I don't think it's a case of, right, now we've survived this season, let's try push into mid-table, then we'll try to get the playoffs. I think for sides like Wealdstone and Maidenhead, it is a case of every season just getting enough points to survive. And what's frustrating is the fact that 50 points is usually enough to survive. And it's not going to be this season. And, we've spoken about Maidenhead always seem to find a way to survive. I think their luck is going to, I don't even class it as luck, but I think their time is running out in the National League. And I think it's the same with Wealdstone as well, if I'm being honest. But we'll have to just see. I think Dagenham, for me, they're the side out of the three that I've been most disappointed with this season, because you'd expect that squad should be nowhere near the bottom five. But I'd expect them to be in the top half with some of the players that they've got in that squad. And they've just simply underperformed this season. I think if we had a bracket of where to perform size this season, I think I'd say Dagenham are significantly underachieved compared to the other two. I just think it's a shame that for Wealdstone and Maidenhead is the fact that the newly promoted sides have all done well this season, because usually there's at least one that struggles, and I think everyone was thinking it was going to be Boston. And even Braintree, if they didn't beat Barnet, they'd be in the hat to go down in the final game week. But, they've managed to pick up a result when it matters, and that's something Wealdstone have done it throughout the season, is when it does really matter, when the pressure's getting on to them, it's like there's going to be a gap if you don't win this game between you and surviving. They've always seemed to pull it out of the bag, but I suppose this is when it really matters, and can they pull it out of the bag today? We've had Allison who's come in, and he said, if there's any justice, York will be the team to go up, miles ahead of their playoff rivals points-wise, 100%. I think all the other sides have been so inconsistent in the final third of the season compared to York, who just remained consistent. And I think they were the side for me that I thought would maybe drop off when they realised that they weren't going to go on to win the title. Yet they've still got 93 points. They could have 96 points and not get promoted. It's not that far off that Wrexham and Notts County season. York have been excellent this year. And I do think that if there's any justice, they will be the side that gets promoted this season. I think they deserve to, compared to all the others inside the top seven. You've got Southend, who could probably get in the playoffs on 68 points. And then you've got York on 96 potentially. That means that there's 28 points between the two sides, if I've done the maths correctly there. That's ridiculous. Have I done it correctly there? 25 so. It might. Yeah, 28 it'll be. Yeah, 28 points. So that is ridiculous, to be honest. There's not even as big a point gap between Southend and Wealdstone. I think it's only like 14 points between the playoffs and the side that could be going down this season, which is ridiculous as well. Also coming in tonight, David said, Paul,
I'd accept relegation a month or so ago, but we've showed fighting spirit to take it to the final day. And do you know what, David? That's all you can ask for. The Boston fans will say the same. Yeah, a month ago, I would have been sat here saying I don't think Wealdstone are going to go down, and we wouldn't have accepted relegation a month ago. But again, we are where we are today. It's gone down to the final day. But listen, you talk about surviving in the National League, Luke, and you look at the likes of Maidenhead and Wealdstone and those that have come up, Tamworth who will come up, and Solihull have been in a few years now and really pushed on. Is teams will always want to progress, but it's small increments that you have to take on board all the time. Unless you've got a big investor that can sort of say, right, there's a load of money, let's have a go at it. You've got to really build slowly. And that's the frustration thing from Wealdstone's perspective. is that in the last 5 years, they've grown the fan base, and we now get over well over 1,000, probably nearer 1,200 on a regular basis at home. When it started at probably some years ago, it was 300 or 400. They've gone and got a new partnership with the training facilities at Brunel University. Has the hybrid model worked this year? Who knows? That's going to be up for debate, and I guess the board will look at that. But they have made incremental improvements. The ground, as much as it is what it is, has got better. So yeah, you've got to get into this league, and then you've got to just start trying to improve on and off the field where you can. And Maidenhead have proved to do that. And these teams that Sutton have gone up into the EFL. I know they've come back down. Forest Green, I know they had a bit of investment. These teams have all got in and pushed on slowly. And the frustrating thing for us, and maybe for Maidenhead, is that you do so well to establish yourself in the league, and then all of a sudden one poor season, and because you're always in that bottom half, tends to make you to sort of see that you're going to drop. So yeah, that's the frustrating thing from our part as fans, I guess, is that you see the improvements that others might not see, and then you have one poor season, and not suggesting it unravels, but it becomes more difficult, and a lot of that hard work maybe goes to waste.
100%. We've also had Ash who's coming in and said first playoff game in 18 years. So it's 18 years. It'll be the year I would been born then, maybe even the year before that. I'm 18 years old now at the moment. So yeah, it'll have actually been, the year I was actually born in 2007, which is ridiculous considering some of the amount of playoffs that Halifax have had. But yes, I think they'd like the home tie Oldham overall. Anyway, we'll get on to the actual predictions now. Now, we spoke about relegation battles. Of course, that takes priority at the moment, Paul. However, the predictions league as well, that must be something slightly in the back of your mind. It is in mine, I suppose. There ain't as much pressure on my side today as there is yours. But of course, we've got our own title race at the moment. Barnet, of course,
look at that.
Yeah, I know it's ridiculous for the final day. Barnet have had their own title race. It's done and dusted for them now. But if you want a title race still in this division, me and Paul have certainly got one between our sides. It's not rigged at all. This is literally the points at the moment, how many we've both achieved. Paul's been on holiday or whatever the last week or so when Sam did it, and Sam's managed to somehow claw it back and actually put Paul in the lead. I think only for the second time this season as well.
Oh man, no pressure then on this set of predictions. Christ, not that there's not enough going on from a Wealdstone perspective. I've now got to try and pick results here that gets me 1 point more, well, at least drawing with you in this set of fixtures. So yeah, pressure's on, Luke. I had no idea that Sam had done so well, so I can only be grateful to him. I did have a good couple of weeks myself running up to that, so to bring it back in. So yeah, what a good finish this will be, and we'll see at 4:45, 5 o'clock exactly where we stand, Luke, as well as the rest of the teams in the National League.
I don't know if you're going to agree with this. I don't actually know who's going to perform better. It could still change. If we, let's say, draw level, so we base it off how many predictions we got correct in the predictions that we did at the start of the season. For example, 1 to 24. So whoever's got the most, you might actually be winning on that. But that's the first thing that comes to my mind of how to draw it fairly. If we're level.
Or we could look at the playoffs and do predictions for the playoffs.
We could do, to be fair, yeah. That would be a shout, actually, yeah. We'll sort that out once the predictions are done and dusted with. And we'll have a quick glance at the table before we get onto the predictions. Of course, the final day, the top 6 is all done and dusted in terms of confirming a playoff spot. Of course, Halifax could drop down to 7th, which would change their opponent. Southend and Gateshead, it's between them for that final playoff spot. Altrincham have really blown it, haven't they, in the final quarter of the season or so. Tamworth been excellent this season. We're in with a shout of finishing inside the playoffs until the final couple of games. Eastleigh, Hartlepool, Sutton, Solihull. I think it's been disappointing a year for all 4. Maybe Sutton, you'd say, not too bad of a year considering it's the first year back in this division. But I think for all 4, I think the supporters were probably expecting better. Woking, good things to come in the future for them. Yeovil, consolidated this season. Whereabouts I think we expected them to be at the start of the season. Boston, an excellent second half of the season, has confirmed safety for them for next year. Aldershot, disappointing season in terms of the league. However, a FA Trophy final coming up for them at Wembley beckons. Braintree confirmed safety, not mathematically yet, but have confirmed safety for next season. I can't see their goal difference being outdone by any of the sides below them. And then, of course, Dagenham as well. It's still in their hands to survive this season, but it's not over yet for them on the final day. And then, of course, Wealdstone and Maidenhead need to win their games to have any chance of surviving. I think for Maidenhead, it's very unlikely. They have to win their game and then hope that Wealdstone and Dagenham both lose. Of course, Fylde and Ebbsfleet's fate is already confirmed, and they will be in the National League North and South next season. First game then, AFC Fylde versus Barnet. Speaking about fate, it's been confirmed both these sides will not be in the National League next season. One will be in League Two and one will be in the National League North. How do you see it going, Paul?
I can only see one victor here, and I think Barnet taking an awful lot of fans up the road for that. They've spent a weekend in Blackpool celebrating their title. They're going to get their trophy today, and I think that will just drive them on. That after their sort of mini blip, just trying to get into winning the championship. They won convincingly last week, and I think they'll do it again today. And I can see a similar scoreline. I've gone with Fylde 0, Barnet 4.
I've gone Fylde 0, Barnet 2 as well. Similar lines to what you stated there about Barnet. I think Fylde's on a massive downer. Very disappointed with them this season. I expected a lot better things in terms of them being able to kick on from the previous year. I think there'll be a lot of individuals in that squad that I think a lot of National League sides will be looking to snap up next season, because I think the issue with Fylde has been they've not been able to play well as a team. They probably don't have the experience needed to survive this season. Whereas I think a lot of individuals will do better in a better side next season. As for Barnet, their fate's confirmed. It doesn't really matter to them. I think if there was any final game of the season before I'm going into the EFL with my side, I think I'd want someone like Fylde away, likely to win. Weekend in Blackpool, what's more to life for them, I suppose, for Barnet this year before they get promoted into the Football League. Of course, I think the aim for them is to get 100 points. So I think they'll be taking this game very seriously to confirm that. Please put your predictions in, guys. We've got a large number of people listening in today. Nearly 70 at the moment, which is mental considering the time that we've started this. Moving on to the next fixture, Aldershot versus Yeovil. Another meaningless fixture. Maybe for Aldershot, a bit of form, maybe to pick up on to going into that FA Trophy final. But for me, I don't think it particularly matters too much. Suppose both sides will be wanting to end the season on a positive note. I'm actually going to go for a 1-1 draw for this game. Yeovil not the best away from home. Aldershot on not the best of form either. So, I'm going to go for a 1-1 draw. How do you see it going?
I've gone with Yeovil to win 2-0. And I think Aldershot are quite lucky after what they've played recently, where they've lost 4-0, 3-0 and 7-2 in the last 5 games, is they then go and face Yeovil. And Yeovil aren't the sharpest shooters in the league. I think you're right. Shots need to think about a little bit of form going into their trophy final. But will they rest some players because that may be coming up? Who knows? I just feel that Yeovil just have a slightly better run of form than Shots have. And, the Shots have got their eyes on other places. Yeovil will want to try and finish as best they can. Who knows what happens to them next year? Martin Hellier and investment and buyers and God knows what's gone on down there. But they'll want to finish strongly there down at Hewish Park. So, I think Yeovil will win 2-0.
People who've come in with the predictions have 1-1, 0-0, 1-1, 1-1, 1-1 since the prediction. Be a Monster, who's also a channel member, said get into the playoffs. It becomes Cup Football League form. His history may be football. Gods be with you. Yeah, of course, for Southend. Someone mentioned it earlier. I didn't actually read the comment out, but they said what the type of mentality that you need going into a playoff. It's not about the best side. It's about the side that's got the most great determination, momentum, and that's something that Southend certainly will have if they can maintain a playoff spot this season. Moving on to the next game, Altrincham versus Tamworth. Suppose for both clubs, I think for Altrincham will be the more disappointing out of the two. Tamworth could have finished inside the playoffs this season somehow. It's been an absolute excellent season for Tamworth. I can't even think of the words to describe it. It's been that good for Tamworth this season. I think even to survive would have been a massive overachievement for them. But for them not even to be inside the playoffs, but to be inside the top half is just ridiculous. As for Altrincham, it's quite hard to explain their season because they're probably whereabouts I predicted them to be. However, it was well in their hands to finish inside the playoffs this season. And I think there's only one word to describe it, and it's the fact that they have blown it this season.
Yeah, tough one to take for Alty because they were always in that shout, and they have been for the last couple of years. And we've always have been complimentary about them, but their inconsistency has hindered them a little bit this year. I mean, the thing about it is, Luke, is they've just had some investment from the Sale Shark owners. They've got £1.4 million invested. They're restructuring their board, so I'm sure they're looking at the longer term sort of benefits rather than maybe being disappointed about not making the playoffs. And it may well do them well that with this investment coming in, not to be in the playoffs and not potentially get promoted too early this season, and sort of see what they can do next year to build on a playoff push. But yeah, there'll be frustration and disappointment because it's one of those where where you're in it and in and around it, and then at the last minute you drop out. And from Tamworth's perspective, when we interviewed Andy Peaks, at the time we interviewed him, they were really in with the shout of potentially getting into that playoffs, and their results became slightly inconsistent, didn't they? And finally, I think the inexperience in the league may not have helped them. Who knows? But what a season for Tamworth with that FA Cup run and being in and around the playoffs with the last month of the season to go is an incredible achievement for a team that weren't fancied. We admitted it to Andy when we spoke to him. We don't know too many of their players. I don't think the league does. So I think next season for Tamworth is a real tough one, the second season syndrome. Everyone knows what they're about now. Andy needs to go and sort of recruit wisely and see what he can do to help that squad build on what they've done this season.
He also acknowledged that, and that's what I was quite impressed with as well. He acknowledged the fact that next season it's not a case of, we're going to be trying to replicate what we've done this year. He said the same aim as what we had this year with the budget and everything we've got and has been part-time is to survive. And I think it's always been the case of your Wealdstone, your Maidenheads, hasn't it, in the past as well. And I think it'll be no different for Tamworth next year to try and survive once again in the National League. In terms of predictions, I've gone for a 2-1 Tamworth win. I think they're just on a lot more. I think it's more positive there than it is at Altrincham at the moment. I think they're on a massive downer. Losing 6-1 to Dagenham away from home is just humiliating, particularly when you look at Dagenham's position at the moment. As for Tamworth, they actually won, didn't they, against Fylde, scored an awful amount of goals at the moment. I'm actually going to go for a 2-1 Tamworth win. How do you see it going?
I've gone with a 1-1 draw for this one. A game that's nothing but a bit of pride and professional pride on part of the players. So I can't see it being the most enthralling game, but they'll certainly be licking their wounds, patting themselves on the back, and going again for next season.
Moving on to the next fixture, Braintree versus Rochdale. Braintree's National League status for the 25-26 campaign is all but confirmed, I suppose, for them. They're not going to go down. They could mathematically still, technically, but it's not going to happen. As for Rochdale, I think they're another side, nothing to play for now. They've confirmed fourth. I suppose the only thing in their favour is they'll want a bit of form going into the playoffs, and I think they'll be able to do that. I'm going to go for a 1-0 Rochdale win. How do you see it going?
Yeah, I've gone with the 2-0 Rochdale win. These predictions are really difficult, Luke, aren't they? Because when we talk about Halifax, what team are they going to put out? Are they going to not help Wealdstone? Are they going to help themselves by resting some players? Or do they want to get in a position where they might be at home second, etc.? And, it's the same. Will Rochdale want to try and win and get into playoffs? Will they rest? A lot of these teams in the playoffs now, it's unpredictable to us as to their psyche and how they feel, because we're not inside these dressing rooms and knowing what the knocks and strains and pains are of the players going into the playoff campaigns. So real difficult ones to predict. But I do think from a fan's perspective, trying to look at it from having played football myself a little bit, you kind of think, well, what would I do? Would I want a run of form? I think that's probably where I would be looking at. And you want a good run of form, a bit of confidence, players playing on a bit of confidence. So I think Rochdale will be a team that will put some players out, and I think they'll easily overcome Braintree and win 2-0.
Next fixture, Eastleigh versus York. A bit of the same with York, isn't it, I suppose? Their fate's confirmed now. They're going to be finishing second inside the playoffs. The difference is the fact that I think they've got probably about 2 weeks until York will be in action after this. I don't know if you class that as actually a positive. Of course, they've got one less game, but I always think for second and third, they're always going to be coming up against the side that's got a bit of momentum after winning the initial game, whereas a side like York will not have been playing football for 2 weeks, and the pressure's all on them at home. So, yeah, I don't know how you should read into this in terms of needing to win to get momentum for the playoffs, because they're not playing for 2 weeks. But I still think York will get the job done. I'm going to go for a 3-1 York win. How do you see it going?
Oh, I've gone exactly the same, Luke. So, 3-1 York win. I think you're right. But I think from the perspective of someone like York, who are a full-time professional setup, 2 weeks is going to be great for them, because they'll be able to go and analyse the teams that they potentially could play. They can work out, how they're going to beat them. They're going to rest some legs. They'll get injuries back. They'll probably have hopefully a full squad. So I don't think the 2 weeks off is too horrific for them. And because of that, they might go strong today, see who's in form and what they can do. So I'm with you. I think even though it's at Eastleigh, they've got nothing to play for. I think York will go strong and win 3-1.
Moving on to the next fixture, we'll miss that one out for now. Hartlepool versus Forest Green Rovers. Both sides, nothing to play for now. Forest Green confirmed third once again. As for Hartlepool, disappointing season, all things considered. I think that squad should have done a lot better. I have a funny feeling they're going to win this game, though. I'm much going to go for a 2-1 Hartlepool win. Forest Green not being on the best of form. I thought they were the type of side that were built for the playoffs, but based on this final quarter of the season for Forest Green Rovers, I'm not too sure that they'll be able to do anything in them now. I'm actually going to go for a Hartlepool 2-1 win. How do you see it going?
I've gone with the 1-1 draw, and Forest Green a real odd team to try and predict and know what they're going to do, because they've got League 2 experience. They're a full-time outfit. They've got good players on paper, and I know you don't win football games on paper, but I saw them come down to the Vale and Wealdstone beat them, and it's just felt like for an awful long time Forest Green have just been in that bit of a malaise of we can't go up, we can't drop out the playoffs, we're probably not even going to play in a playoff eliminator. So it must be a real difficult one for them to just keep going through the motions, knowing that whatever they do, it's not really going to affect them. But now they've got to start turning it on, because they're going to go into playoff football. And as it's been pointed out, league form goes out the window, becomes cup football. Everyone's up for it. They've got to prove they're up for it. They've got to use their experience of the players they've got on paper, in their squad rather, to go and sort of push on and try and get promoted back. But I don't think today will be a classic. I think it will be one that they're both, Pools are definitely on the beach. Forest Green feel like that they're just going through the motions until the playoffs. I've gone for a 1-1 draw.
I don't think people realise how quickly the playoffs come and go. If you actually look in previous years, Barnet had such a great year, similar to Forest Green, probably did a little bit better. I think they finished second, didn't they, Barnet last year? And, they knew they were second for the majority of the season. Then playoffs came around, and the season just went like that after losing to Solihull Moors. And it could be the case with Forest Green if they don't get their act together. They need to get a bit of form going into the playoffs. And I think it's crucial to get something out of this game, but I just can't see it. I think Hartlepool, final day of the season, being at home, I think I'd expect them to win. Moving on to the next game then, we'll go to Sutton versus Woking. All things considered, I think probably a fairly average season for Sutton, 13th in the National League. First season back in this division after being relegated. You'd probably say you'd expect them to have done a little bit better than what they have done, but I thought a fully new squad. They haven't been a basket case unlike previous years. previous teams and slipped through the net or been in a relegation battle. They've never been in any fear of going down. I think it's been an okay season. I'd expect them to build on it next year. As for Woking, I think it's been a good season, all things considered. If you think of the start of the season with the ownership issues that they had, I think they've done very well to get in the position that they have done, and I can only see them improving next year as well. How do you see it going?
Yeah, I think you're right. Sutton, I hadn't predicted to go straight back up. I genuinely thought that they were going to.
When I heard that was like the one prediction that you stated, and I was a bit like, I'm not too sure.
Yeah, because they weren't coming down from a bad place. You know, they got stronger off field, and they'd got a new manager in Steve Morrison, and it hadn't quite worked out for him in the EFL too. But you couldn't put your finger on why it was. It just happens, right? So I just thought they were going to be very strong. Again, their squad looked really favourable for the National League. Steve Morrison's come in, and I guess from his perspective, has turned his squad around to get those in that hadn't suffered the relegation and probably were a bit apathetic about it all and everything else. So he went fairly young. He went for a core of young players, and he's taken the season to adapt. And I saw them play early on down at the Vale, and I was very impressed with them. And you could see that this is a longer term plan to maybe be a bit more sustainable, not be one of those teams that drop because they've got older pros and they've got players on big contracts or whatever it may be. And he's gone in and he's sort of produced his own little blueprint rather for Sutton. And I think on the whole they've done very well. They haven't torn up any trees, but I think they'll win today. I've got them to win 2-0 against Woking. They're at home, so it's I think Sutton is again maybe a bit like Altrincham, looking at let's push on next year. Once now we've lost a couple of other big teams out of the league, and let us step up to be the next ones on the block.
Prediction then, Paul. I've gone for a 0-0 draw. I think both sides are strong defensively. What about you?
Yeah, 2-0 to Sutton.
2-0 to Sutton. Right, we'll move on to the next game. You do like Sutton, don't you, Paul? We'll move on to the final sides that are involved in the relegation battle before. Oh, no, we've got one more before we do that. Oldham versus Ebbsfleet. Oldham, another side, I think the best they could finish now is maintain that 5th playoff spot. I think they'd want to be at home, considering they haven't had a playoff match in such a long period of time now. I think to have a playoff match at Boundary Park would be massive for them. And I think you can't really get an easier opponent than Ebbsfleet. So I'm going to go for a 2-0 Oldham win. How do you see it going?
Yeah, I've gone 3-0. I think this is certainly a case for a team in the playoffs wanting to go into the playoffs off the back of a win. I think you're right, Luke. Getting a good win at home is important for them today to then get that home advantage second, and Boundary Park sort of people go into Boundary Park as a home fan thinking we can win this over 2 legs. So, I think you're right. You'd like at that fixture at this time of the season, if you were any club, Ebbsfleet, with all due respect to Ebbsfleet, they were long gone, weren't they? And you'd want to be playing them at home the last game of the season, whatever your situation is in the league. So Oldham needs to take advantage of this, and I think they will, and they'll win 3-0.
100%. I've gone for a 2-0 win as well. It's good that we've gone for a different prediction there as well, because I had a feeling we could have gone for the same for that one. Moving on to the 4 final fixtures. Now, all 4 of these fixtures are so significant this year. There's a lot of fixtures, I suppose, now that are kind of, I won't say pointless, but neither side has anything to play for. But all 4 of these games, at least one of the sides has something to play for. And we'll start things off with the relegation battle then. We'll start things off with the outsiders then. Maidenhead versus Boston. Boston have done excellent this year. There's actually people asking for Boston's manager to be manager of the season this year. They're nominating him, I should say. I couldn't get my words out there, to be manager of the season for what he's done in the second half of the year. Who knows what Boston could have achieved if he was there for the whole season. It'd be interesting to see how they do next year under him. Of course, they're coming up against Maidenhead, who have something to play for. Well, it's going to be huge for them today. They have to win to have any chance of surviving in the National League this season. I think they'll be able to win this game, but I don't think they're going to survive. I'm going to go for a 2-0 Maidenhead win. How do you see it going?
These are really hard to predict, Luke, because obviously I've got head and heart involved here. But I think the weight of expectation on Maidenhead is a lot. I can't see. I've gone with Boston winning 3-1. I'd like to think that Maidenhead will do everything it can to stay up, but it's obviously out of their hands. And I think that then could become really difficult if they start to hear other results, if they're not going their way, etc. And Boston are just on a great run of form, and you haven't seen them the other week. They were very efficient and very good without being spectacular. So, I watched Maidenhead, and with all due respect, the Maidenhead Wealdstone game at the Vale was like watching something in the National League South rather than the National League. Poor teams overall, and I think Maidenhead will succumb today and lose 3-1.
Fair enough. Then it's just. Yeah, you've mentioned there you don't want to see them go down. And I suppose you don't, because I know we have quite a good relationship with Maidenhead and their set of supporters, and they're a good club. And I think they bring something a little bit different to this division that other sides don't, with the fact that they're so niche in terms of them being so industrial. They've come out of nowhere as well. Every season, everyone writes them off and they always prove everyone wrong. And I think it's still an achievement to say that they've got until the final season, final game of the season, I should say, to have any chance of surviving. And if history repeats itself, they will somehow survive. But I just think they're relying on, they have to win their game, and then they're relying on Dagenham and Wealdstone to both lose, and I think they're going to struggle. We've had Matt Noble, who's coming and said, on coach now, on coach 1 of 5, currently en route to Solihull today, up the Daggers. Yeah, they're another team that we're going to be discussing shortly. Do you want to come on to that Dagenham game, or do you want to go on to your side, Paul?
Yeah, let's do Solihull Daggers.
Solihull versus Dagenham then. As we've got the Dagenham fans with us, Solihull nothing to play for. Matt Taylor, would he want to help his former side out, do you think, Paul?
Do you know what? Who knows? Who knows? Wealdstone fans are very indifferent about him and his spell he had with us earlier in the season. Wealdstone fans will definitely be wanting Solihull to win today without a shadow of a doubt, and they'll be, Matty Taylor's yellow and blue army, etc. And just for one sort of afternoon, who knows, Luke? They played in the week, they didn't win. He's made all the right noise on social media about going in and playing and winning and doing well for ready for next season and everything else. Dagenham are taking a bundle of fans up there, aren't they? They're going to really go for it. They're going to make it difficult for Solihull. They're going to drive their team forward. My heart, rather than my head, says that Solihull will win, but I think that's probably more in hope than expectation. I've said here that Solihull would win 2-0, but let's see.
I think Dagenham will win 1-0. I think you look at their form recently; it's been excellent. I think overall it's been a poor season for them. I've mentioned this a number of times on the podcast this morning, and mentioned the fact that it shouldn't cover up the cracks that this has been a very poor season for Dagenham in terms of the actual squad. But I think all things considered, in the past month, with everything that's gone on there, I think they've done pretty well to pick up form on how they have done. I suppose for next season, they need to significantly improve. I always see Dagenham as a side for me that I feel like should be ambitious in this division from a Football League side. I always expect them to be just outside of the playoffs. And I thought this year they might be able to kick on a little bit and be in and around the playoffs, but they've just certainly gone the other way, if anything. And they really do need to improve next year. And I think they will do. What's important is the fact that they can maintain a National League spot for next season, because if they don't, going into the South, we've seen sides struggle. Torquay, yesterday it's confirmed that they're going to be in the National League South next season for their second year, I believe. Who else is who's struggling in that division? There's a number of sides who are doing. Maidstone, it's their second year in that division as well. A lot of sides seem to struggle in that division, so Dagenham will be wanting to avoid the National League South. And I think they'll be able to against Solihull. Solihull, nothing to play for. I'm not too impressed with them overall. So I think they'll be able to win 1-0, which would confirm them a National League spot for next season and would inevitably relegate Maidenhead and Wealdstone. But we will come on to that game anyway. Of course, for you, Paul, that's not the case. Depending on your result for this game, your prediction, Wealdstone would survive. And that is, of course, Wealdstone versus Halifax. How do you see this one going? Do you want to just talk through the game and everything and, give your prediction?
I think it really boils down, well, to two things, which is still a lot, is who do Halifax put out and how do they fancy it? And will Stones come out and play like they haven't played in the last 3 games, create chances and score goals? And two massive asks, really. I think Wealdstone fans have got to believe that they can at least do their part of the bargain and win the game. That glimmer of hope is the fact that Halifax are where they are and they've got not a lot to play for till the playoffs now. And, with their squad depleted, do they rest players? And, there's going to be 1,500 Stones fans there. We've got to really want to rely on them to help the team. Little things like kicking downhill. Those that know the Vale, it is on a slope, and we do very well kicking downhill in the second half towards the section of home fans. All little things like that, I guess, hopefully will go our way and will help us try and get that win. And I genuinely think we will get that win. I think, when we've got more to play for than Halifax, and I think that really will help. And I think Wealdstone will win. The big challenge is what happens up at Solihull, and my heart does sort of say that we will survive, but my head thinks that it's going to be very difficult. So, apologies to Daggers fans. I'm not doing that because I want you to go down. I'm saying this because I want Wealdstone to stay up, and my emotions flip between we're going down to I think we can do it on a very regular basis over the last few days, Luke. And although I don't let football consume me, this is certainly something that I've been thinking about on and off over the last week or so. And I think many fans have, Dagenham fans, Maidenhead fans, Wealdstone fans. So here's hoping that the footballing gods are in the lands of Wealdstone, and we're in the National League next season. But if we're not, and that's because we haven't been good enough over the season. So let's just see from 3 o'clock how it pans out. But I'm going with a Stones 2, Halifax 1 result.
Right, in terms of my predictions, the football gods would not be on Wealdstone's side. I want Wealdstone to survive because you're my co-host. It's the same with Maidenhead and Dagenham. I don't think there's ever any club that I'd want to see get relegated from the National League, apart from potentially one who went down a few years ago and hopefully doesn't return. But Wealdstone are a side for me that I really want to survive. Maidenhead are, and Dagenham as well. All 3 set of supporters watch the podcast and quite complimentary about it. So I don't want any to really go down. But of course, at least 2 of those are going to be going down this season. And I think it'll be Wealdstone and Maidenhead. For this game, I've gone Wealdstone 0, Halifax 2. I just think the pressure's off Halifax. There's going to be so much pressure on Wealdstone, and Halifax seem to do better against sides that come at them. And that's when Halifax will just catch you on the break. And I can see that happening. And I think Halifax will win 2-0. Which would be a shame. It's the only time that I'm ever not too keen on my own side winning. But I think we will be able to. Well, I think we will win this game going into the playoffs, which I suppose would be good for us gaining momentum going into the playoffs. But I don't know how much you read into that because we were on good form last year going into the playoffs and we lost at the first hurdle to Solihull Moors. So we'll have to wait and see. But yeah, good luck to yourself, Paul, as well for the relegation battle. Moving on to the final fixture. Southend versus Gateshead then. This is a more positive type of game because at least the losers will be in the National League next season. As for Gateshead, they're a side for me that have really blown it. It shouldn't be coming down to the final game of the season for them to confirm a playoff spot and not even actually be inside the playoffs. As for Southend, I suppose they can't believe their luck, the fact that sides around them have been so poor, but also the fact that they've been able to pick up when it really does matter. And I think they'll be able to continue on the route that they've been going on recently and actually win here. I'm actually going to go for a Southend 2-0 win against Gateshead. Like the Halifax game, I think Gateshead, the pressure's on them. They're going to have to come at them. And I think it's against the Southend side that is very dangerous because They're just really strong defensively, and then we'll be able to catch you on the break and exploit you through set pieces as well. So I think Southend will be able to confirm a playoff spot. How do you see it going?
I think Southend will confirm a playoff spot. This is a real humdinger of a match, and if it wasn't for me being a Wealdstone fan and the predicament weird, I think that would be the game that I would like to go and watch. It's not necessarily winner takes all, because Southend can go up with the point, and I think that's how it will be achieved. I've gone for a 2-2 draw. Now, I think the difficult thing for Southend here, Luke, is if they had to know they had to go and win, and Gateshead knew that they have to go and win, and it's a straight shootout, winner takes all. That's a little bit more sort of easier for Southend to deal with. I think the fact that they can go up with a draw again is a really difficult one, because they then don't want to lose, if that makes sense. So because they can go up with the draw, how do they approach the game? Do they go all out and say, we're going to go and win? Clearly, Gateshead aren't on a great run of form, and Southend are. So they're going to have the confidence that they can do that anyway. When it gets to a point where maybe they're not winning, but they are drawing, then mindset comes to, we just cannot lose this game. Can we go on and win it? But if we go on and win it, do we expose ourselves and potentially lose it? So it's a really, really difficult one for Southend if they find themselves in that situation of, are they drawing with minutes to go, etc. If they're blowing them out the water, they're 2 or 3 up, then all day long it's going to be. But they're going to always think, we want to win, we need to win, so they're going to go for it. And because of that, I've gone for a 2-2 draw. I think it will be one of those really, really good games that will go down as a classic for the clubs that are involved, and will prove the National League as a really good league. So yeah, I've gone with a 2-2 draw, and Southend will go up because of that. Go into the playoffs because of that.
So that wraps up our predictions then. For me then, I think if results do go the way that I've predicted, Southend would get inside the playoffs. Wealdstone and Maidenhead would join Ebbsfleet and Fylde in getting relegated this season, and Dagenham would survive. As for you, Paul, if results go your way, Southend would make playoffs, and Wealdstone would survive, and Dagenham and Maidenhead would go down.
Yeah. He's hoping.
Hoping. Yeah. But no, best of luck to you, Paul, and best of luck to everyone in the division. As for yourself, like I've said, I really do. I've never wanted my side not to win a game like I don't want my side to win today, if that makes sense. So best of luck. Of course, I won't be there. I'll be watching it on stream. I don't know if are you commentating today, Paul?
I am commentating today, yes. So please, Halifax fans, do forgive me if I at any point get more excited than I maybe should be and become a bit more partisan, depending on how the game's panning out. But yes, I will be commentating today. So those that are able to watch, then hopefully you'll enjoy it, and it'll be a favourable outcome for us. But either way, it's been a pleasure to commentate on National League games for Wealdstone and be involved in this podcast, and we'll see where it takes us next year.
Yeah, I'm sure we'll have discussions about that as well over the summer, and hopefully we won't need to at all, to be honest, because I really do hope that he survives today. But these are the scores on the doors anyway. Final game week of the Predictions League, unless we draw after this game week, and that would mean it'd be based on the playoff predictions. Paul is actually winning by a point. The second time this year Paul's taken the lead, and you'll be hoping, Paul, to maintain that lead so that you don't have to put yourself in a Barnet shirt once again at the end of the season, because that would be what's an opposite phrase to icing on the cake? I suppose it'd be the opposite to that, wouldn't it, for yourself, with Barnet getting promoted, Wealdstone potentially going down, and then having to wear a Barnet shirt.
I would, and please forgive my language, but it'd probably be an opposite phrase to icing on the cake would be a kick in the bollocks. So
yeah, it probably would be a lot and some, to be honest, for that one. But no, they're the scores anyway. As well, I do really appreciate as well everyone who's tuned in this season to the podcast. It doesn't go unnoticed. I love the fact that it's so interactive. That's the whole aim of what I do, and I love the fact that everyone comes in and comments. We get a lot of regulars. We got a lot of new people who've come in as well over the course of the season, and I'm sure it will be the case next season. As for Barnet fans, best of luck in League Two. It's been good covering you in the National League. As for Ebbsfleet and Fylde fans as well, Best of luck to you. Best of luck to you as well in the National League South and North next season. Hopefully, you can make a return. And then, of course, best of luck to everyone else in the final game week. Massive thank you to Kaz Accepted, who've sponsored the podcast this season. And of course, as well, massive thank you to your company as well, Paul, who've sponsored the Predictions League as well. Please remember to like and subscribe, and we will see you next time. Bye for now.